Welcome to the December 7th Rules Committee meeting. We have a quorum. Alderman Suffredin, do you mind reading in our remote meeting language?
Sure. I move that we allow this meeting to take place remotely, consistent with the directives of Governor Pritzker's emergency orders relative to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Second?
Second.
Is there gonna take the roll?
Yes. Alderman Fisk, absent. Alderman Braithwaite. Alderman Braithwaite?
He's absent at this moment.
Oh, okay. Alderman Nguyen?
Aye.
Alderman Wilson?
Aye.
Alderman Ruth Simmons?
Aye.
Alderman Suffredin?
Aye.
Alderman Revelle?
Aye.
Alderman Rainey?
She's not present at this time.
Mayor Haggerty?
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite just joined.
Okay.
Thank you. Motion passes. And next we have public comment. And by the direction of the staff, you'll be called up for 3-minute max of public comment. Welcome to the meeting.
Okay. Carla Sutton, if you can unmute yourself.
Did I get it?
Yes, you're able. Thank you. Go ahead, sir. You can speak.
Okay. Good evening to the members of the Rules Committee, Carla Sutton, a member of the 5th Ward. I want to express my opposition tonight to the proposed Rule 126R20, the attempt to suppress public comment on the vague notion that it might be disruptive or in some ways preventing people from doing their business. We have been going to these meetings for years and been very practical. I first want to thank the police when they were called into the city council meetings for their politeness and their patience when they were called in to attend several meetings. But as we attend this proposed amendment is vague, it's basically unenforceable, and it's an attempt to suppress anyone who disagrees with the people who are calling the meeting. And I find it systematically a way to suppress free speech and comments from citizens. There's a much better way to do this by one, identifying what items do you feel disruptive and a meeting. You just can't use those words without any proof of how they will be judged and how they will be acted before you start asking people to be ejected from a meeting or cutting off their mics. As far as I'm concerned, you ought to put this on hold or don't vote on it at all or vote it down. Thank you.
Mike Fasoko, you're next, sir. Mike Fasoko is next.
I'm here. So there are already too many restrictions on citizens' freedom of speech at city meetings, especially at council meetings and any of these committee meetings that you hold. Now the council wants to restrict words people can use, words found in every dictionary. You want to restrict behavior if a chairperson finds it objectionable. You want to challenge a citizen's demeanor subjectively. You threaten citizens with being ejected from a virtual meeting or muted, again, if a chairperson deems it to be so. So it's all very subjective without definition. So if you're, and during which citizens would have no recourse. So if you're going to pass or try to pass a resolution like this, and like Mr. Sutton was just alluding to, then you need to provide more clarity. Which words exactly are you going to ban? Describe the level of temperament and demeanor you are going to ban. Maybe set a decibel level for a citizen's voice so they don't overreach in their level of speech. What is a crude or offensive image? What is crude or offensive behavior? All of these things need to be defined. The chairperson is being deemed a judge and a jury, and again, a citizen has no recourse with a few seconds they get to speak in the first place. So I agree with Mr. Sutton. You should not pass this. You should reject it. It shouldn't have even come up before you. I'm going to stick in my comment regarding human services now because I don't intend to waste my time coming back for that. Alderman Fisk, apparently, who wants to ban somebody's use of their front property or their property in any way, shape, or form, is a ridiculous thing to bring forward. If somebody's causing a disturbance, there are already rules for that, I think, in the city that can be enforced. But to ban something called beer pong, which I've heard is on every campus of every university in the country, is just another overreach. Thank you very much.
Sebastian Nels.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sebastian Knowles, and I'm a resident of the 9th Ward. I am here this evening to speak in opposition of Resolution 126-R-20. The recent actions of the City Council have resulted in public outcry by residents and a call for a more transparent government. This resolution seems to be in response to an uptick in public comments that have held the City Council and its dealings in a negative light. The cries of residents who find an issue taking place in Evanston to be unjust may appear to be disruptive, crude, or vulgar. However, their hearts are often in the right place, as we all just want to make Evanston into a better community for everyone. So instead of passing an amendment that would further restrict the voices of residents during City Council meetings, we should be looking further into what causes these grievances and how these issues can further be resolved. The resolution itself is too filled with ambiguity to be a responsible amendment to the rules and organization of the City Council. So I ask that the City Council clarify these rules further to limit that said ambiguity that is currently in the language. And I hope that the City Council will see that residents are frustrated with the lack of transparency and will work to heal the division between residents and the council itself. Thank you.
Ray Freeman. Ray, if you can unmute yourself, please. *6. There you go.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry about that. Good evening. Good afternoon, Rules Committee. Coincidentally, well, first, before I make my comment, I'd like to thank the last three people, Mike and Carlos and this gentleman who just spoke, who, of course, I agree 150% with. At the Rules Committee now, I'd like to talk about rules. What's the purpose and intent of the rules? What are the consequences when the rules are not followed? Once again, you are raising the question of how to censure public comment and proper decorum. We've gone through down this road several times before. It appears that you've lost sight of the purpose for public comment to begin with. It's stated in every agenda for all public comments that public comment is intended to foster a dialogue. The dialogue is an integral part of the decision-making process where the residents can share ideas, commitments, and concerns about our Evanston community. Instead of trying so hard to censure public comment, the city council should pass a public participation ordinance like the one that has the authentic intent of providing a discussion, dialogue, or deliberation among participants, allowing residents to engage meaningfully in the policy process. I'm asking you now to please place on the agenda next week for discussion and action a public participation ordinance. This will greatly enhance the community involvement and allow for the discussion that is intended by all of these public comments, as we've spoken about in the past. Let's start the new year on the right path and let the residents get involved, however they choose to get involved or not get involved, and be part of the public process. That's all I have for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tina Payton?
Good evening, everyone. I would like to make a comment on public comment. To me, you should be able to say what you want to say as long as you don't use profanity. You may not agree with everything that the person is saying at public comment, but that does not give you the right to mute the person when they're talking. Also, at some of the meetings, now that we're on Zoom, many times for me personally, I will wave my hand with the icon below and continue to be ignored. So therefore, I have to interrupt in order to speak and say my opinion, because you seem to fail some of the times to see that I'm waving my hand. Also, I believe that this is to mute whoever you want to. So as some of us have been called agitators or problem makers in the past, and now you want to mute us. You want to eliminate opposition to anything that we want to speak about. If we want to oppose a building or something that someone has said, that should be allowed as long as we're not using profanity. Then sometimes alderpersons respond to public comment. And you say at the beginning of each meeting that the alderman or mayor or someone is not supposed to respond to public comment, but you selectively respond to the comments that you want to respond to. So if you want to make a response to a public comment, then you should allow the public commenter to have a chance to respond to what you say. Also, all city meetings, as I said before, including this one, should be recorded. Then you can see certain behaviors from both parties, the people making public comment and the city officials will be on record at all times. Mayor Haggerty said that we would discuss about recording all city meetings, and I still believe that this should happen. We're on Zoom. We will be on Zoom for a while. So I would say that you need to vote no on this matter, and Black Lives Matter. Have a good evening.
Lori Keenan, next. If you're speaking, I can't hear you.
Hi, my name is Keenan, and I live in the 7th Ward. I wanted to speak tonight quickly on the idea that you're going to begin sort of subjectively and arbitrarily choosing what comments are allowed and what comments are not allowed, and by cutting the mic of citizens that are trying to express their ideas and opinions. I also would like to speak on the rules for special order of business. You're considering changing the rules on special order of business, and it seems as if the way that you're changing the rules makes this almost not a special order of business. And there are very specific things that happen with the special order of business, that it has to be a date certain and so on and so forth. So I'm just worried by cutting this this rule for special order of business almost in half, you're really sort of diluting the fact that this is a special order of business and how that needs to be approached. So I would just ask for your consideration in exploring that a little bit more before you make that that change to the special order of business, but also more importantly that that the idea that you're going to change the rules for public comment, I would really encourage you not to do that. We were already being, the voices of people are already being minimized, and it's already hard enough through Zoom meetings and whatever else. So I was encouraged to hear Sebastian Null speak about it, that if he's a mayoral candidate as well, that he would applaud and celebrate the voices of the people as well. So I would ask you to please really consider that. I know when Judy Fisk limited speaking at a Rules Committee meeting very arbitrarily, selecting a period of time that she just chose out of thin air for 1 minute, the Attorney General's office shut that down. So without very specific rules about what you're going to call, however you're going to do this, it seems arbitrary and subjective, and I would really encourage you not to do this tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you for all of those that shared your public comment. That's the end of public comment. And next we have for approval. Staff recommends approval of the minutes for August 3rd, 2020 and October 5th, 2020 committee meetings. This is for action.
Move approval.
A second. Can we discuss now?
Yes, please, Mayor Haggerty.
All right, thank you, Chairwoman. I just wanted to get a status. I know that 4 months ago, we met on August 3rd, 2020. In those minutes, we talk about the missing executive session audio recordings and minutes, including the May 29th, 2018 and May 7th, 2018. What's the status of those? I don't know if the clerk's here and he could speak to the status, but I'm curious on the status of these minutes, because that was 4 months ago, and he did state at that meeting that there will be no problem getting these done before this council is no longer in session, which is in May. I'm also curious on the number that are missing too.
Is the clerk here to respond or with any update? I generally just see who's on my 9 scores right.
I am here. I wasn't planning on, I don't know if this is in order. I'm happy to discuss this at I wasn't prepared to discuss this at this moment. It's not on the agenda nor noticed. What you're doing now is simply approving the minutes and not having discussion on this other matter. So I think it's actually.
I just want to know, are these done? This was 4 months ago. Are these done?
Yeah, it's out of order to have this discussion now, based on the Open Meetings Act. This wasn't noticed. So
I'll take that as no, these are not done.
You can take it as we should follow the Open Meetings Act.
So it's appropriate discussion. Is there any staff report? Are they done or do we have any update for staff, or is staff prepared to speak to this? And if not, if there's no further discussion, we can take an action.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Rules Committee, Alexander Ruggie. I can report from the Law Department. We have not received these minutes, and we do not have any update from the Law Department.
Is there any further discussion? It's been moved and seconded. Is someone available to take the roll?
Alderman Braithwaite? Alderman Braithwaite? Not here. Alderman Nguyen?
Alderman Braithwaite said yes. He's here. He just was muted.
Oh, okay. Alderman Nguyen?
Aye.
Alderman Wilson?
Aye.
Alderman Ruth Simmons?
Aye.
Alderman Suffredin?
Aye.
Alderman Ravel?
Aye.
Alderman Rainey?
Aye.
Alderman Fleming?
Aye.
Mayor Haggerty?
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite?
He responded.
But he's talking right now. If you're talking to us, Alderman Braithwaite, we can't hear you. You're not talking to us? You are talking to us.
He's having technical difficulties at this time.
It's the same problem we had at, I remember our last council meeting with Alderman Braithwaite.
Okay, Alderman Braithwaite, we can't.
Now he's muted.
You're gonna call?
He's going to call in.
Okay. I'll wait because I don't know that if I missed something for this agenda item. Keep going. Okay. All right. So we took the roll, right? And so that motion actually passed.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. So we're going to move on to items for consideration. We have staff recommends the Rule Committee to approve the 2021 Rules Committee schedule, and this is for action.
Move approval.
Second.
Sorry, Mayor Haggerty.
So this schedule, I think, looks fine. It's every other month. The only suggestion I would have is moving up the April 5th meeting because the election literally is that next day on April 6th. I'd suggest moving that up to the prior Monday, which would have been Monday, March. I don't have my calendar in front of me. I'm guessing March 30th, the 31 days, 30th or 29th.
March 29th is what you're referring to, Alderman, Mayor?
Yes, I'm suggesting that be March 29th. Excuse me. Well, it could actually, so it could be March 29th, or you could bump it till after April 5th. I just think that week is a tough week because it is literally the next day is the elections, and a lot of aldermen are running again.
How about the following?
Well, that'll be a city council meeting. So I guess the question is, do you want this to be a part of a city council? It will be the 19th, I think, is when we have the third meeting of the month, I believe.
So you're saying the third meeting of the month, we have council the 2nd and the 4th. We could do it the 3rd, and you're saying I'm looking at my calendar.
That's correct. That's what I'm suggesting, so that would not.
Is that making it an additional Monday then, if we do it that way?
Only if we don't have city council, a city council meeting.
But right now there is not one scheduled.
Sure, but sometimes it's at third, so sometimes it's added if there's a discussion of topic that.
I would prefer to move it to a Monday that we already have a meeting scheduled with the possibility that we wouldn't add a third Monday. If that would be the Monday before.
Okay with that if we do Monday the 12th.
I guess the question is, do you realistically see this council taking any action before the next city council is seated? Because if not, we can just cancel that meeting altogether.
Possibly. So I don't want to take it off the calendar. We'll still be seated. The 80th City Council will still be seated. So if you can put it on the 12th, if there is support to put it on the 12th, then if there is no business, then we can always cancel for lack of new business And if there is, then we'd have an opportunity to do our business.
All right, so this, so we understand the 12th is already APW, P&D, and City Council.
Yes, sometimes it happens like that.
Well, I just want to be sure with the City Council because you're the ones who have to attend, not me. So I want to be sure everyone's okay with that. We can amend the schedule as appropriate.
I'm okay with it.
Just as a information, I'm sorry, I'm just now calling back in. Where are we on the agenda? What's the problem?
We're looking at our rules calendar for
Okay.
2021, and there's a meeting that is the day before the election for the 81st City Council, and we want to change that meeting not to burden the incumbent candidates.
Or
Got it.
And then what we're discussing right now, Peter, is moving it to the following Monday, which is also a city council meeting.
Sure. So if we have business, we can, okay, thank you for the clarification.
Alderman Rainey is
Madam Chair, could we make the decision at the February 1 Rules Committee meeting?
Is what? Why? Mayor Haggerty.
I would just say, I mean, we have it on the agenda today to approve all the meeting dates. So I would just say, let's pick a date, either the 12th or that third Monday, and call it a day. And then on the February meeting, if the council, at that point wanted to change it, they could have a conversation about changing it. But at least let's get it calendared.
I would support that. Is there any support for that?
I move approval.
Second.
Just so we're clear on the moving approval, you're moving approval for the amendment of making this April 12th.
Yes.
Right.
Alderman Braithwaite? Ready for roll call? Alderman Braithwaite? Alderman, I can't hear him. Alderman Nguyen?
I just needed the host.
Okay.
You.
Alderman Braithwaite?
Aye, thank you, Doc.
Okay. Alderman Nguyen?
Aye.
Alderman Wilson?
Aye.
Alderman Ruth Simmons?
Aye.
Alderman Suffredin?
Aye.
Alderman Revelle?
Aye.
Alderman Rainey?
Aye.
Alderman Fleming?
Aye.
Mayor Haggerty?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. And next we have R2. Staff recommends adoption of Resolution 126R20 by the Rules Committee to update the City Council rules to include rules on decorum and virtual platform meetings. I move approval.
Second.
Alderman Rainey.
I listened very carefully to the public comment on this. I don't think I was a few minutes late to the meeting, but I don't think any member of the council placed this item on our agenda. So we heard a lot of criticism for it being on here. And I, for one, would just as soon it not be on our agenda. So I understand the need for decorum on our virtual platforms. However, I don't think we need this resolution on here. So if anybody would like to move to remove it from our agenda, I'll be glad to support it.
I move. I'm sorry, before I do that, we have more comments.
But I don't, I don't think any of us put this places on the agenda. I think this was staff driven. So we're not the bad guys. Some think we are. I mean, we might be bad, but not because we put this on the agenda.
Alderman Nguyen?
Yes, my question is, I guess this would be to city staff, is that in our in our regular rules, we do have rules about someone who makes loud, threatening, personal, or uses abusive language. Is it necessary for us to? Wouldn't that fold into any type of comments that are made on our Zoom, our virtual meetings, or is there something that we need to do? Because it looks like we already have this provision that stops people from being disruptive or disrupting, behaving using abusive language. That's a question to the city staff.
Chair Simmons, did you want me to speak to this?
If you don't mind, please.
Sure. Thank you.
Good evening. I think she was asking for staff.
Yeah.
Good evening, Chair, members of the City Council Rules Committee. Luke Stowe, Interim Director of Administrative Services. Essentially what staff is recommending is we're just trying to modernize what's already existing in our city rules. Section 6.8, I think Alderman Nguyen is referring to Section 6.8, and we're simply trying to modernize it for 2020 in the Zoom platform. And I also wanted to clarify, it came up, I believe, in public comment about recording meetings. All meetings are recorded. They are either recorded via the Zoom platform or they're recorded via Anderson. Like this meeting, for example, is not recorded on the Zoom platform because it's being recorded by Anderson and broadcast on YouTube and Channel 16. Speaking of Channel 16, we also have an obligation to maintain some level of decorum due to the fact that we are broadcasting on YouTube and Channel 16. For the most part, we've had pretty good success throughout this run since March of broadcasting virtual meetings. Northwestern had a very serious incident several months ago with the Zoom bombing, inappropriate videos and images being shared. It was a highly disruptive and disturbing event. The city clerk has also been, when he was holding a police Zoom meeting on police topics, there was a pretty significant racist Zoom bombing incident. So that is really the focus, is trying to provide provisions for us to be able to deal with those types of issues, which hopefully we never have to.
Alderman Wilson, and then Alderman Rainey.
Thank you. So it's generally my understanding that what we're really doing here is we're just making the regular rules apply to the Zoom platform. Is that a fair generalization, Mr. Stowe?
That's correct. We're just trying to reflect 2020 and the Zoom virtual world that we live in now in these meetings.
Right, and unfortunately, we have actually in the council meetings have had situations where profanity has been used in the meetings, and it's that old expression when you're playing a game as a kid, it's ruining it for everybody, right? But I don't want to necessarily go down the path of saying that we're going to adopt George Carlin's 7 bad words or the overly inclusive provisions in the FCC. But Mr. Stowe's point is well taken, is that these are broadcast both on television, pretty much live. I don't think there's really any opportunity to do any significant editing on live broadcasts. And so I think just, letting people know that, again, these profanity is not okay in these meetings. Threats, pornographic images, things like that. It seems intuitive, but without a rule, somebody could take issue with that and push that envelope, and I don't think we want to go there.
And we have had incidents of in public comment of people using profanity. Unfortunately, we do sometimes have grade school and high school students who are following along for a school project and whatnot. So trying to be considerate of that. We have had a couple incidents too where people have gone way over their allotted time. I don't mean a few seconds. I mean way over, to the point where they are refusing to cede their time back to the chair.
Alderman Rainey.
This resolution is not going to do one thing for the Zoom bombing that Northwestern experienced or the clerk experienced. It won't do a thing for that. So, yeah.
I think the point of
yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. The point that we're trying to get to is that we have a mechanism. If someone were to do something highly inappropriate, we have the ability to remove them from the meeting. I would like to have, basically guidance in our city code or city rules to be able to do that.
Can't we just add the word Zoom to our current city code? I mean, we have to go through all this.
And that is, I have the same question, Alderman Braithwaite, then Alderman Suffredin, but can we, as Alderman Rainey is stating, just carry over the same language and add Zoom? And is virtual meetings excluded from the language that we have already? Is it not to be assumed that it's any type of public meeting that we have? Is it necessary is more of the question.
That was my question too.
Yeah. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Alex Ruggie, Assistant City Attorney. I can speak to that. The reason we did add this section to the rules is simply because previously to the pandemic and the governor suspending the in-person meeting requirements, the OMA actually prevents public comment from being held virtually or via the telephone. So previously, pursuant to statute and the city council rules, all public comment had to be in person. So we added this section such that this could reflect 2020, the pandemic, and the virtual setting, with the idea that once the pandemic ends and we're able to hold in-person meetings, this can go away, as we're unsure if the Illinois legislature is going to continue to allow virtual public comment or if they will go back to the other statute. So that's why we reflected it here as opposed to the other decorum. And the other reason we added this rule, it's not to limit freedom of speech or anyone's First Amendment rights. I want to make that clear, but it's in order to give staff an outlet in some of these smaller committee meetings. Several times staff has had incidents where people are using profanity or out of order, and staff feels uncomfortable taking any action, whether it be muting or ejecting from the meeting. And at the end of the day, staff is looking for direction on how you'd like us to handle that. If we have a city council rule in place, then staff can handle this equitably for anyone that uses profanity. This way, it just gives staff more direction on how to handle these issues.
Alderman Braithwaite, and then Alderman Braithwaite.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to build on Alderman Wilson's comments, and I want to first start by saying that I appreciate the fact that we have a very open city council where we can hear from our residents from many different formats, whether it's public comments, emails, and phone calls. But I would agree that within the last 4 years of the past administration, we've definitely seen a decline in civility, both from our residents and even sometimes as city council members. And I would be in full support of this for the simple fact that I've sat in meetings when staff is being attacked and comments get more than colorful, more than spirited, and they get very abusive. So I do think to have a tool to be able to monitor that is a really good thing. It doesn't impede on anyone's freedom of speech. It just means the very basic of being courteous when you speak to someone. And if that's too much to ask in this day in society when we conduct our city business, where we sometimes have kids, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, family members who attend these meetings, and we've really lost our way. So I'm ready to support this 100%. In fact, I think there's one additional thing that we should add. And I haven't seen too much abuse of this, but from time to time with council members, it does get a bit heated. So I'd be willing to add an amendment if there's enough support to get this passed, that to apply this to city council members, that if a council member uses abusive language or is highly disrespectful to a resident or their peers, that by a majority vote that council member can also be muted or removed from a meeting, which I believe that the mayor, whomever has presiding, can do that. Now, maybe that's too overarching, but my goal is not to stop the conversation or impede on the dialogue, but really a cry to get back to a level of civility that we all need. It's unfortunate that we've lost some people along the way this last 4 years, and a lot of it has to do because of the circus that has been created by a few members of of our town who feel that it's okay to say and feel whatever you want to say under the umbrella of freedom of speech. And I think that there should be some limits in how we conduct ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Braithwaite. Alderman Suffredin.
Luke, in an in-person meeting, does the chair have the authority and the ability to mute the public comment microphone, or to Alderman Braithwaite's point, to mute the microphones of council members or members of a committee?
That's been done. Yes.
That'd be more of an honest question than a Luke question. I apologize, Luke, if it's not your wheelhouse.
Sorry, can you repeat your question, Alder?
In an in-person meeting, do the rules allow for the chair to mute the public comment microphone, or mute, to Alderman Braithwaite's point, mute the microphone of a member of the council or a member of the committee?
Yeah, and I'll let Ms. Ruggie speak to this as well. And I recall in the past 8 years, there have been a couple of times in in-person meetings where the microphone was turned off because the person was being disruptive or going way over time and refusing to cede their time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is correct. The chair does have that ability. It's a little bit different via Zoom because for here, so Luke Stowe is our virtual administrator. So, there's different settings for who can mute and who cannot.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the goal here seems to be to replicate the in-person rules for this format, and then also to allow for those smaller meetings that you described, for there to be some sort of rule compliant way for staff to remove somebody who's being disruptive.
That's correct.
That's correct. And obviously this would be, a last resort situation, of course.
And for meetings that are broadcast, ejecting someone really doesn't have much effect because they can still follow it on Channel 16 or on YouTube. But what about for meetings that are not broadcast? If someone's ejected, is there a way for them to continue to follow the proceedings, or is that it? They're out of there?
That's correct. In that case, if it's a meeting that's not being broadcast live by Anderson on YouTube or Channel 16, they might not have the access to be able to continue. And again, that would be a case of last resort, and we have not permanently ejected anyone from a meeting since March. That has never happened and hopefully never will.
Okay, and then Alex, maybe this is a question for you. If that were to happen to somebody, is that a denial of any rights of theirs? If it were, say, a ZBA meeting or something where they have an interest and they've been ejected and not allowed to further participate?
So I'd have to look into that. It would depend on if public comment was over, if they had already had an opportunity to speak, or if they are part of the hearing and presenting to the meeting. In that situation, they could always, eject the person, take a 10-minute break, and for the entire meeting, go on recess, and then open the meeting back up after perhaps everyone's had an opportunity to calm down. I believe, Luke, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you can also just temporarily place someone in the waiting room as opposed to ejecting them. And that gives them kind of just a moment to collect themselves and calm down. And then, they can be readmitted to the meeting. So that might be a better option in those smaller meetings that aren't broadcast.
Okay.
That is correct.
In an in-person meeting, a person is allowed to hold up a sign. In this format, are people allowed to use their identifying box to put in a message, or has that been prohibited as we've been dealing with this since March?
So that is currently allowed.
And that would need to be allowed under this proposed rule?
Yes, unless it's if they use profanity, that might have to be revisited because we just wouldn't want profanity displayed publicly. But yes.
I appreciate the difficult position that you're in, Luke, but I agree with Alderman Rainey. This may not be ready to go right now, and I also suggest that we remove it from the.
Alderman Ravel.
So I'm a little bit confused because in an in-person meeting, it would be up to the chair of the meeting to be determining that there was some kind of disruptive behavior. But in this one, are we, I believe, Alex, you've been saying that this is needed by staff, so staff can staff would be making the determination that the comments are disruptive as opposed to necessarily the chair of the meeting.
Yeah, so I think the way we drafted that is simply because I believe as Luke Stowe is the Zoom administrator in this situation, he's the one with the ability to mute or to eject someone, or if there's a meeting without a chair. So I think we can go back and change this if it's what the Rules Committee would like us to do, but we can specify that the chair has the ultimate say, but then the administrator would carry out the actions of the chair.
It does, just as a point of information, it does read that on page 14, the person found out of order by the chair of the meeting. So it does give the power to the chair, and then the chair would inadvertently give the power to the staff to remove the person. I mean, the big deal is if they're kind and courteous with their words and they don't use profanity or threatening language, we don't have a problem. But if you do, there's a remedy.
And so to that point, I mean, I think I'm agreeing with everyone, and so that it doesn't seem that we have established another rule that maybe seems like we are silencing some residents. If we just use the language and the rules that we have now for decorum and stick virtual meetings apply also, and that way it's consistent.
So I'm not sure the point you're arguing, Alderman Simmons or Chair.
My point is that I agree with just about everyone that's here that we should have some way to hold everyone accountable to decorum, and we have that already with our meeting decorum policy, and we can just state either in a separate policy or expand that one to include virtual meetings as well. And so I'm asking for staff feedback on if there is any reason why that wouldn't meet the goals that you have to manage the meetings.
If I could respond in two parts. I mean, first, if there's an alignment on decorum, then yes, we all are on the same page with the exception of those that would want it removed. Secondly, I think this then clarifies the position that if someone does it, then you understand what the consequences are. I mean, in an adult world, in a professional setting, on the workplace, you can't cuss, you can't threaten anyone. So I don't understand why we would allow that in a professional setting where we're conducting city business. And if somebody would have an issue with it, then I'm really glad that we have a rule in place that allows the chair of whatever meeting that's being governed by our, whether it's city council or a subcommittee, that it says that maybe you can be warned once, but after that warning, you will be muted or removed.
So
Pretty
all I'm saying
straightforward.
We're 30 minutes into however long into this conversation about decorum, and we already have standards for that. If we can apply that to virtual meetings as well, do we meet the goals of what staff is recommending? And that is a question for staff.
If I could just speak for mine, I just want to amplify what Alderman Braithwaite was saying. I'm not interested in being
Am I here or is Luke?
No, Luke just froze.
Okay.
Yeah, somebody's probably calling or just give them.
we have seconds to get rid of that. So that is, in that case, we're interested in trying to move very quickly in that case.
Luke, will you repeat yourself because we lost you for about 10 seconds?
Sure. Sorry about that. So I was just saying that I wanted to amplify what Alderman Braithwaite was saying about the ability. Staff is looking for direction for the chair to provide direction if someone needs to be muted or someone's out of order or someone needs to be removed from the meeting. There could be extreme examples where if it's a Zoom bombing incident, it's highly inappropriate information or images or video that someone like myself who's serving as a web admin literally has seconds to basically eject that person from the meeting. So that would be an extreme example and hopefully would never happen. But, we're just trying to, have a kind of a roadmap or a guide on how to handle these kind of situations if they ever occur.
So in addition to what we have in place already, you're asking for the authority to eject people virtually. Is that what you're asking for? I'm just trying to get to
in an extreme example, like like in the Northwestern case where someone was broadcasting, I think it was child pornography on a Zoom meeting. You don't necessarily have time to ask the chair, hey, is it okay if I remove this person from the meeting? You want the ability to remove that person immediately.
You don't need a resolution for that.
I mean, so Alderman Ravel.
Well, I was just going to suggest if we look at our existing council rules, section 6-6.9 reads procedures for conduct under 6.8, which talks about disorderly conduct, shall apply to meetings held by the city council, including standing committees and ward meetings. And we could amend that to say, and meetings conducted by Zoom to basically say that the whole, our decorum rules that we've already had in place for years and years are going to apply in our virtual meetings as well. And I would think that this bombing, that's not public comment. That's not our residents, I don't think. And I would think we should be able to just nip that in the bud, no matter whether we have a rule specific for that or not.
Exactly.
Can you give feedback to Alderman Ravel's recommendation, please? Staff?
As a point of information, Luke, I would ask that you just reference the document that's in front of us. For all of us, it's pretty clear. So you're either going to support it and support the fact that we need to have these measures or not to support it. I think it's out of staff's hands, and it's now a matter of whether or not we want to accept this as a rule, which I am definitely ready to vote in support of.
But I thought the chair and Alderman Ravel were speaking, and that
exactly. So what I was asking is that since it's staff that has brought this up as an agenda item with a concern and staff that is going to be managing it, I'm asking for Luke to give feedback on Alderman Ravel's recommendation. Does that help you meet the goals in which you are making this introduction?
Yeah, I think I completely understand both sides of the issue. I think our preference, Ms. Ruggie and I, our preference would be what was drafted. Obviously, if there is an amendment or an update to our current city rules to reflect virtual platforms, that it's at least meeting some of the goals of what we were trying to attempt to accomplish.
And what is left vulnerable if we do it in the way that Alderman Ravel has recommended? What areas are still vulnerable? Because to that point, a Zoom bombing is a virtual hacking, or so it's different than a public comment. They haven't signed up, so that should be how we would handle any other emergency. So what other areas are you concerned about outside of adding virtual meetings to the current decorum policy that we have on record?
Sure, and I appreciate your questions on this. I've done dozens and dozens of these meetings, so there's just different scenarios. Obviously, the Northwestern example is an extreme example, but then there's been other cases where people are just being highly disruptive or yelling in the middle of the meetings or unmuting themselves, unmuting themselves, not using their real names. So there's just been different challenges. I do like how Ms. Ruggie has specifically spelled out, a couple different options here where the person is found out of order by the chair, if the person's interrupting the meeting with crude or offensive behavior, and also if they're being so disruptive that the meeting can't continue. It just allows more flexibility.
Alderman Sufferton?
All right, so as it pertains to 29.2, it says that the administrator may mute the person's microphone. That needs to have something at the direction of the chair, right? We've agreed on that the administrator, like, Luke, I don't want you to be in that situation. The chair of the meeting is the one who would have to say mute that person's microphone, correct?
And I fully support that.
All right. I just want to make sure, because I Zoom bombing and legitimate public comment running over its allotted time are two very different issues.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Madam Chair.
I'm sorry, Alderman Nguyen.
I've taken a little time to look at what Alderman Ravel's suggestion would do, and I think that I fully recognize the staff's concerns, but I do think under 6.9, which is on page 23 of our packet, if you read 6.8, which is the rules of conduct, and what and that if there is someone who is disrupting or disturbing or otherwise impeding the conduct of the meeting, the mayor or presiding officer can take action. And and then there are a few other things here about you may interrupt a speaker who's violating these rules or disrupting a meeting. And the mayor or her presiding officer may provide a verbal warning to the attendee. And then the next one is, where does this apply? And it says procedures for conduct, as Alderman Ravel said. This applies to meetings held by the city council, including standing committees and ward meetings, And if we said, and all virtual meetings there, then that 6.8 conduct, which sounds almost the same as what's in this, I recognize it's not exactly, I think that would give us a start. And if this continues, then we could go back and possibly rework it a little bit. But I think if simply by adding virtual to this at this time, I think we accomplish a lot of the goals. And if staff comes back and says it's not quite enough, then we could look at it again.
Alderman Wilson.
And I agree with that. And then to wrap in Alderman Suffern's points about changing 29.2 to make that at the direction of the chair, assuming that part's going to get wrapped into this amendment as well. So, yeah, I think it sounds like what we really want to do is just, take this and incorporate this in 6.8 and 6.9. So it's more clear to everybody, especially the community, that we're not, passing some sort of draconian rules that are going to cut off people's opportunity to speak. This is really just a, protection and an application of the existing rules, and to make sure that the tools in place for the staff to actually undertake to do the thing, because it's the microphone operation is different, right? So it's not a microphone that gets shut off. It's a Zoom, mysterious operation that happens behind the scenes that I'm not familiar with. So as long as they have that tool. So maybe if this comes back to council with all of this direction, it can be, as I think Alderman Ravel and Nguyen suggested, just wrap that into parts of 6.8 and 6.9. And again, to incorporate Alderman Suffern's point about accepting the extreme situations, just the ordinary chair discretion, that's to be done at the direction of the chair. Is that a good plan?
I like that.
Do we need are we just giving staff direction, or do we need to take some type of amended action?
Let me do this so we can just kind of advance it. I move that we amend the proposed resolution such that it will no longer be a new rule, but that it will be a revision to existing Rule 6.8 and 6.9 to incorporate the remote platforms, including but not limited to Zoom, and also to ensure that there is language drafted before it gets to the City Council that is clear that in instances such as exceeding time in public comment, that muting is to be done at the direction of the chair, not at the election of the administrator. That's my motion.
Second.
Alderman Rainey.
Yeah, before this amended resolution that is going to be folded into the rules of the council comes to the rules committee again, could it please come to the council for review? Because I was following along with Alderman Ravel because that was exactly my idea, but now it's getting a little intense. And I'm not interested in having this resolution attached to the council rules. So I'd like to see what the finished product is recommended by staff before it comes to the next rules committee. Okay? I just want to see an advance copy. And I think
are you saying you want to see it at a council meeting, or you just
no,
want
I just want to see
it comes to
yeah,
meeting?
just so that we can see it and take a look at it in advance of a meeting where we're going to.
I guess what I'm suggesting is
otherwise we're going to be talking about it for another hour.
Right.
Well, and that's what I'm trying to cut off. I'm suggesting that we proceed with my motion and such that it will come to council next in that revised form.
Yeah.
And then we'll see it at council in the revised form. Or we could just hold it in the committee and have it rewritten, but then we're going to talk about it another hour at the next rules meeting. So.
Well, I'm concerned that your suggestion is going to cause an 2 hour long. So anyway, let's just see it before we have it before us for another discussion. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you. Thank you, Alderman Rainey. And we have a motion and a second. We can take a roll on that.
Alderman Braithwaite?
It was an aye.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Nguyen?
Aye.
Alderman Wilson?
Aye.
Alderman Ruth Simmons?
Aye.
Alderman Sefferden?
Aye.
I'm sorry?
Aye, yes.
Okay, Alderman Ravel?
Aye.
Alderman Rainey?
Aye.
Alderman Fleming?
Aye.
Mayor Haggerty?
Aye.
The amended motion passes. And next, we have some items for discussion. We're actually going to go straight to R5 and come back to R4. We have our residents that are signed up for comment, I believe. We want to accommodate their schedule as much as possible. So, I am recommending that the Rules Committee discuss the creation of a youth commission.
We used to have one.
Awesome. So I don't know if there is, I guess I could have comment. Was there any, was Audrey or Director Hemingway here, any staff? If not, then I can have some comment. Okay, so we have incredible student resident community here, and there is a youth council program at National League of Cities, which we observed in conference there, and they have regular conferences at member cities. If we were not in COVID, they would have been in Tampa this year. They visit DC and meet with their Congress people, and they meet with their youth leaders nationwide on best practices to bring back to their cities. Youth leadership is an incredible way to strengthen our community, raise up the voice of the youth. We can make sure that we are being well informed directly from that community on what their needs and expectations are. We can better serve families in the community if we have a direct voice and partnership with the youth. And in this last couple of weeks, we have 11 residents here that attended National League of Cities City Summit. It was the first virtual conference. They attended for 3 days and enjoyed and learned at workshops. They came back with some fresh ideas and some directions for us here. I am recommending that we formalize a youth commission or committee to have a ongoing leadership board and youth delegate advocate representation that reports to the city council. And we've spoken with our law department, and they can be a commission or a committee. The youth, they are making this recommendation as well. They are here. I believe at least some of them are here to speak to their experience at National League of Cities and how a youth commission might benefit their their goals. So if we have any of the youth delegates here that would like to have a comment before the Rules Committee, which is basically your city council, we would love to hear from you. Also, if Kim Holmes Ross is here, who has functioned as the in her role as director of community engagement at Cradle to Career, she has been our partner and has led and managed this program. She attended the conference with our youth. She has coordinated them and has been a huge advocate and partner. She already manages a youth advocate program at Cradle before doing this, so it was very appropriate that she and her program be a partner with the city. So thank you to Cradle to Career and the leadership there for partnering with us in this experience. I also want to say thank you to our Illinois State Senator Laura Fine for sponsoring the youth uniform for this commission. And Kimberly or any of the youth delegates, if you are here and would like to present, please do feel free to do so and unmute yourself.
Great. Thank you, Alderman Simmons. I'm going to ask the youth who are with us to please turn on your cameras. And we're going to ask Elisa to speak first, Elisa Walker. We are excited to partner with you on this project. I think it's super important to have student voice in government. So we are going to let the students speak to that. I see Elisa. Let's follow her with Elijah and Nia and Jacoby. That's what I see on this page.
Hi, I'm trying to come off of camera, but it says the host stopped it from me turning it back on. Okay, there we go.
Okay, great. Thanks,
Okay.
Elisa.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Elisa Walker, and I did have the great opportunity to attend one of the NLC conferences. One thing that we did learn there was that I took away was the importance of small business. I think it was very, let me see, how do I word this? I think it was definitely something that Evanston takes pride in. There's small businesses, there's a lot of them, and I feel like small businesses help Evanston in many ways, especially during COVID. I know that a lot of small businesses have been helping out families and have actually served food to some of the elders during these times. And I really appreciated them for doing that. And just the fact that the NLC conference emphasized on how important it is to support them back so that they can keep supporting us was very beneficial to hear. And I'm very excited to push that agenda forward into our town.
Thanks, Elisa. Come on, Elijah.
Hello, everybody. Hope you guys are doing well. I'm Elijah. And I also had the great opportunity to attend the NLC committee meetings. One thing I took away from it was how important it is to have youth delegates kind of taking lead in the communities, especially in the schools. They seem to be so concerned about us youth because now at times adults can do everything. Sometimes the youth have to do it too, and I feel like it's easier for them to connect to the youth. So it's just great. I noticed that some of the people I met that aren't even from the state, they just seem so eager to make good changes in their schools, whether it's like food, nutrition, or mental illness needs. They just did whatever they could, and most importantly, they asked the youth what they needed to be successful. I really think that was a good idea of what we can put into play here.
Thank you, Elijah. I'm going to ask Nia, who is a freshman at Spelman. She's at home doing her online learning thanks to COVID, but she's with us. She came back. She worked with us during her senior year. So we took freshmen in high school all the way to freshmen in college with us to the conference. I'm going to have Nia speak, and then Tiana, who's our freshman at the high school.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nia Dillard. I also attended the conference, and I think my favorite thing was just being around people my age and seeing, it was inspiring seeing how involved they were in their communities. Just hearing about their experiences and what they've done in their cities and their communities to better it. It inspired me because now I want to go out there and I want to play a big part in the city as well. And I think it's really important that we have this committee of young people just so that our voices can be heard and so that we can make some change.
Come on, Tiana. Thank you, Nia. Okay,
Okay, I'm sorry. I was in a loud place. So we're saying what we liked about the conference?
Yes, baby. Or even what you love about Evanston or student voice and leadership.
Okay, one thing I liked about the conference is, like Nia said, there are a lot of people my age and a lot of people, well, a lot of kids that inspired me to do more things in my community. And a lot of kids I've seen and heard that has done a lot to help their community and have done things I wouldn't even think that a kid can do at the age.
Thanks, Tiana. Jacoby? Is Jacoby with us?
I don't think I see Jacoby.
Okay, he was here. How about Chris? Chris, are you with us? Chris or Lila? I think that might be everybody.
It says that the co-host has stopped it.
Okay, well, you can keep talking and we'll get you on camera. But Chris is a senior at the high school. Come on, Chris, there you are.
Okay, so one thing that was a takeaway for me was that just seeing, it was motivating to see other students my age because it really showed that our voices really do matter and that we can have an impact on our communities.
Thanks, Chris. And then if we have Lila, Lila is a sophomore at the high school.
One big takeaway for me was that in the conference, I liked how they were talking about small businesses because small businesses really help the community and bring people together and help create bonds with others so that we become closer. So that's what I really like about small businesses, that they brought that up.
Thanks, Lila. And I think that's everybody we have with us tonight. Again, we took 11 students to the conference, everything from small business to mental health. We covered, and you can see these students are ready to work. So we're excited to work with them, and we're excited that they're excited. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Kimberly. And is there any discussion from City Council? Alderman Fleming and then Mayor Haggerty.
Yeah, I have a quick question from the youth who went to National League of Cities. What was the representation like from the different wards? And for the youth council, is there a thought that we'd have 9 and so we'd have a youth from each ward, or is it just would be open call? Or is the thought that these youth who went to NLC would start this first youth council and then we'd rotate people out as we do with our other not councils, committees or subcommittees?
I'll speak to that actually. So the thought is that we have 6 of our 9 wards that are represented out of the 11 students. And the thought is that we would have representation from each of the wards. And I would recommend that we have a standing seat for the youth advocates, since it is a community youth leadership program that is already very civically engaged and had already been supporting businesses and other matters. But the idea would be that we appoint this committee since they have gone to NLC, and we have, I think, at least 4 seniors on here that would be rolling off, and that we continue on with representation from each of the 9 wards with some process of recommendation by the ward alderman.
And then if the thought is to keep some or all of the current advocates or people, youth from the advocates, is that selection process, how would we manage that just with getting recommendations from outside the ward? So I don't know how many kids are usually on the advocates team right now, and I think they are I've seen them be involved, so keeping them makes sense, but how would that affect our numbers?
So it would be like, for example, on MWEBE, there's a standing seat from the chamber. The chamber appoints somebody. And for economic development, I think there's a standing seat, maybe from zoning or something.
Okay, I thought you meant all the advocates. You just mean one rep.
No.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
But
so
to
I totally support that, to have a new youth council, and I don't know if we want to line it up to have it start with the new city council or what the timeline would be, but I think it's a key voice we're missing. Even when we have the city school liaison meeting, we don't have any youth there. So I think it's a key voice we're missing as we're making decisions.
So I completely agree and appreciate that support, Alderman Fleming. I think to line it up with the city council, I think more of an academic school year for them so that they can maximize the experience and get to conferences, which are in November and March, and allow this council to expire and then look at academic school year for their terms. And those details, I guess we can discuss more if it passes this committee. But that was the thought behind it. Mayor Haggerty?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And nice to see you, Kimberly, and nice to see all of the advocates. I appreciate everything that you've all been doing related to COVID-19 and getting folks to wear masks here in Evanston. I like the idea. I would propose that maybe you, Alderman Ruth Simmons, and Kimberly Ross Holmes and these students, work together to really flesh out what this looks like. I think that's the biggest thing, is we want to make sure it's something that's of value to you, but also value to our community. And I like the idea that if this commission, has 9 people on it, and each one is part of their role for that year is ad hoc on a committee around the city. I think that's a really interesting idea. And then you can really get a flavor for the issues that city council members are dealing with on different committees. So I'm prepared if work was done and then came back to the next rules committee meeting, or if it's brought to the council, wherever it goes next, but to get this in place so that the new city council has this in place and can appoint members. I like that idea.
Alderman Rainey, did I see your hand up?
I was just going to suggest that you get somebody maybe from Human Services to look in the archives to just take a look at the format used by the years and years ago Youth Commission. It was a really interesting commission. Just for historical purposes.
Thank you, Alderman Rainey. Alderman Nguyen, did I see your hand up, or did you speak already? No? Okay. So if there is no further discussion, then I would like for us to advance it to whatever next step is. And before it gets to any final action at City Council, we have those details named out. Alderman Fleming's point about, broad representation. Great idea from Mayor Haggerty about some assignment to other committees and at what time in the year they are appointed, their term. So are we okay to pass it in Rules Committee and work on those details before it gets to City Council?
It wasn't tabled. It wasn't tabled for action tonight. It was just tabled for discussion. So I'm not sure we can vote on this, but I think we can give the direction that you just gave, Madam Chair. And so I think that just then tees up the work to be done, and then staff and you can decide whether it has to come back to Rules Committee or whether it goes to the council directly. I would just add, the one other thing I would add is budget, if there needs to be any kind of budget for this group too, for conferences or anything like that.
Okay, thank you. So I worked with various community leaders and organizations to support funding of this program, and there is support. There are other institutions that have offered support going forward. Can we, so if we are working on details, is there any reason why you're opposed to advancing it out of Rules Committee with an action of recommendation and work on those details before it gets to City Council?
I'm sorry, I didn't think we could take a vote on something that's just discussion. That's all, Madam Chair.
Okay, can I move approval that we pass the Youth Commission, and with direction that with staff and Human Services will complete the details and final recommendation before it gets to City Council?
So Madam Chair, just as a point of order, because it is an item for discussion, if that's the direction you want to give staff, you don't need to make a motion. Staff can just go ahead and do that, and then either bring it back to rules or bring it back to City Council for further discussion. But if the direction from the Rules Committee is to move forward on creating this commission, then we'll go ahead and do so.
Thank you. So I'm directing that we move forward with creating it. I'm available. The NLC staff is also available. They have a youth leadership delegate coordinator. Alderman Rainey has brought to our attention that there's some historical information on this as well. And then we have Cradle to Career as a partner as well. So I would ask that we, with details, bring it back to City Council when it's ready.
Excellent.
Question.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Thank you first. Thank you for bringing this forward, Alderman Simmons. To Kim and Cradle to Career, thank you so much for doing the heavy lifting. I think we're all excited about it. Quick question, just what was the cost that was sponsored to get the kids to DC? Does anyone know?
So they haven't, I don't know what the cost to DC is based on their registration and hotel and travel. I don't think DC will happen in person this spring either, from what I've seen from NLC communication. So we can work on future budgets. The soonest in-person meeting that is scheduled is November of 2021, and that's even tentative due to COVID.
Okay.
So the registration, Kim, do you remember what the registration was per youth delegate? I don't remember.
I think Audrey's on the line. I believe it was 150.
Yeah.
Yes. And we took 11. So.
Yeah, $150 per.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you all for being here. Thank you, and we'll talk soon. You're welcome to stay if you like.
You're dismissed. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have a R4 for discussion. City staff recommends the Rules Committee discuss whether it's appropriate for the City of Evanston to reimburse elected officials or staff attorney fees for their defense pertaining to Board of Ethics complaints and provide staff guidance on future practices for discussion. Alderman Nguyen?
Yes. You know, I read through this item and, you know, and was surprised, not terribly surprised, because I knew how active the Board of Ethics has been on all of these issues. But the total cost that the city has paid for are $62,763. And thinking about this and what's been happening with our Board of Ethics over the last 4 years, which is unlike it has ever been used before. And Alderman Rainey can probably confirm that, and as well as the other aldermen. I think that we should ask the staff to look at changing this from, we have our ethics ordinance, but having the administrative body not be a citizen-appointed board of ethics, but actually a hearing officer, so that we don't have to hire outside counsel for it, and it doesn't become so politicized. So I would really like to see us change the process somewhat. I supported our ethics law provision change. I thought those were excellent changes, but I think the one thing that's left that really needs to be addressed is that we have a board of ethics that is a group of citizens, frequently with no legal training, who are put into this sort of a political circus frequently. And a hearing officer would provide arm's length, well-trained review of this that could create a record. We would not need to hire outside counsel for this, to staff it. And we might see a reduction in some of these legal fees. I mean, I have an opinion about the legal fees as well, but I think that's something that I would like to have the staff look at, because our Board of Ethics has really not been operating in the way that it has operated before. I think that in some ways it's been weaponized by people in the community, and I don't think that that would be the case if it went before a hearing officer who had legal training and had the ability to run the procedures with more professionalism.
Mayor Haggerty?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that's an interesting idea, Alderman Nguyen. If you think about any kind of disputes that we as residents have in the community, many of them are adjudicated by an administrative hearing officer. And so you think you got a ticket and it was inappropriate, you can contest it and you go before that board. I think the only difference would be ultimately there is, a higher authority above that administrative officer where it would go potentially to the council or something. But I would be interested if our city attorney staff and city manager's office, gave us a framework of what that might look like later this winter. I am interested in having Alex Rugi, who's here, just go over for us the numbers, because I am particularly concerned that the ethics board here in Evanston has been politicized and has been weaponized over the last 4 years, and it doesn't come without an expense to our residents. And so I'd like to have a good understanding. I'd like any folks that are listening to have an understanding of when these claims are made. Do our elected officials get representation? Do we then, and we can have a discussion about this, think it's appropriate whether you should get representation or not? And then how much it has cost our taxpayers to represent on these different ethics claims that have been made. I'm probably the most recent one. I was brought up on ethics charges by the city clerk, Devon Reed, and by Misty Wittenberg. I was fully exonerated of those charges, but it literally, went on for about a year with multiple hearings. I had to go out and get an attorney to defend me at city expense. That cost our taxpayers $8,500. I wish I didn't have to go out and get an attorney, but we are in the middle of a pandemic. We have all these other issues that we're dealing with, and I needed to take these charges seriously, even though I felt pretty strongly that they were baseless. And the board concluded that they were baseless. And so I just like you, Alex, if you can give us a sense of what the costs are, and again, what our policy is right now in terms of being an elected official, whether we can be defended at the expense of the city. And also, I'm interested if our rules say if an elected official files a ethics complaint against another elected official here in town, and it's deemed to be, baseless, and that person's fully exonerated, should the elected official who filed that be the one to pay the bill instead of the taxpayers?
I can speak to a few of those things, Mr. Mayor. So just as to go over the expenses that have been incurred so far for the Board of Ethics in the last 4 years, just as a recap, we amended the ethics ordinance and created a special counsel for the Board of Ethics about a little over a year ago. So since doing that, we have had special counsel, and just in that year alone, it's cost the city almost $31,000 just to have special counsel to the Board of Ethics. On top of that, the city has spent about another $32,000 in attorney's fees to represent elected officials that have been brought up on ethics charges. You'll see in the memo that the majority of those claims were unfounded. So the city did pay for representation to those elected officials that had the ethics complaints filed against them where there was a finding of no liability. What staff seeks to do is, back in 2019, we passed a resolution in which we said we would pay the outside counsel fees for elected officials. And that resolution is attached to our memo. What we're looking to ask and seek direction from the Rules Committee is whether or not, if an elected official is found liable, should the city still reimburse those attorney's fees? So according to the Illinois Tort Immunity Act, or the Local Government and Tort Immunity Act of Illinois, it specifies that a local municipality may elect to either defend or indemnify its employees, which includes its elected officials. So state statute allows for municipality to decide on its own whether or not it will defend and indemnify and pay attorney's fees for its employees and its elected officials. Now, it's been the practice that we have paid all of these attorneys' bills regardless of the findings. But as there have been budget cuts with COVID, and the city is always looking for ways to cut taxpayer expense, staff is wondering if the Rules Committee and the City Council would like to continue to pay those attorneys' fees if there is a finding of liable. And Mr. Mayor, to your last question on whether or not the elected official who brings a complaint against another elected official with a finding of no liability, if the initial complainant elected official should pay the attorney's bills, there is no rule that states that at this time. If that's something this Rules Committee would like us to do, that is something that we can incorporate into the Ethics Board, but staff will defer to the committee.
Thank you. I would just conclude with, again, I think over the last 4 years, we have seen the Ethics Board in Evanston be politicized, be weaponized, cost the taxpayers over $60,000, as Alex Ruggie just said. And I think that we should think about other alternatives to the Ethics Board, like an administrative hearing judge who is he or she an attorney who understands this, and perhaps with that model, and again, we'd have to have legal counsel do the research if we were to adjudicate that way, we wouldn't have to have our elected officials have attorneys at the city's expense. I suppose if they wanted to have somebody at their own expense, they could, but they would not have to do that. And so it would be handled almost like a small claims kind of court where you come in and defend yourself. So I think that's worthy of examination.
Alderman Nguyen?
Well, I like the idea of potentially having the cost shifting, but has the city staff looked at cost shifting, not just in the instance where one elected official brings charges against another, but cost shifting back towards any individual who brings an ethics claim if it is found to be unfounded by the Board of Ethics?
That's not something that we initially looked at when we revised the ethics ordinance last year, but if that is direction from staff, we can put a fee shifting provision within the ordinance.
So my question is that permissible under Illinois law to create a fee shifting system like that?
I'll have to look into that. I've not heard of anything like that, but I know that state statutes allow for attorneys' fees reimbursed to be reimbursed on certain issues.
Right.
So we'll just have to see if we're able to do that within our own boards and commissions.
Okay, I'd like to know the answer to that. Yeah,
absolutely.
Alderman Rainey, did you have your hand up?
I did.
Yes, Alderman Rainey.
I have 2 points. Alderman Nguyen, did you mean that if people file ethics charges against aldermen or staff and they're found to be unfounded, that then the cost of the administrative law judge or whoever is then charged to the complainant? Is that what you're suggesting?
no, actually what I was just talking about there, just a second ago, Alderman Rainey, was in the instance of if anyone brings, whether it's an elected official or I'm just sort of proposing this to think about it, but if someone brings a claim, an ethics claim before whatever the adjudicating entity is, whether it's the Board of Ethics or an administrative hearing judge, and the claim is found to be unfounded, can the city fee shift back onto the plaintiff there? And
that was my question.
Right. So, I mean, that not necessarily the cost of the administrative hearing judge. I hadn't thought about that, but just the cost of the lawyers. So maybe it is the cost of the administrative.
Well, what if there are no lawyers? Yeah, that's what I meant.
Okay. So then maybe it would be the administrative hearing judge. But,
Right.
you know, I think that what we've seen over time is that people have filed Board of Ethics violations left and right. And, you know, to almost as harassment, I would argue. And I think we need to figure out what's a way that we can actually get back to legitimate ethics concerns and not have it be, as the mayor described, sort of this circus. So that's something that I would like to talk about. Yeah, go ahead.
Chair Simmons, has there ever been a case in the city of Evanston where one alderman has filed ethics charges against another alderman?
Not in our past 10 years or 3 terms.
No, I was asking Alderman Simmons, or Attorney Ruggie.
Alderman Rainey, so in my, I've been with the city 5 years. I've not heard of that happening. The only one I know is the city clerk filing the complaint against the mayor.
But I'm talking about aldermen because we were mentioning aldermen.
Right.
Aldermen.
Right.
I've been here 30 years and it has never happened. So even to make that a point or an issue, probably, I doubt that it's going to happen soon, but because it hasn't happened in the past, but you never know, it could happen. So, and I've never known of a alderman to file a complaint against a staff person. I do know that the city clerk and Misty Wittenberg have been responsible for numerous complaints, but alderman against alderman, I am not familiar with, and I heard that mentioned in this latest conversation. So,
Alderman Braithwaite, you had your hand up.
Sure. And I just wanted to do 2 things. First, support Alderman Nguyen's first request. Over the past 3 years, I've worked very closely with our administrative adjudication team, along with Kimberly Richardson's. We have explored the alternatives to arrest after reviewing these fines, and I think it's just really disheartening to look at that $62,000 coming off of a very aggressive budget season and thinking how we could have used that in more productive ways. And I can tell you in my specific situation, I think there was a letter that was issued to those folks who filed that there was no grounds, and I don't know what legal hoops they used to push it, but the first response was that there was no grounds. And then to see looking at the other cases, no findings, one partial, no findings, $62,000 later, I think it's really, it would be really responsible for us to find a new way of administering this with a less cost to the taxpayers. So I'm definitely willing to support, or I should say support exploring, looking at the administrative adjudication just based on my experience these past 3 years as an alternative option.
And then the 62,000, that's just based on outside counsel? Is that what that? Yeah, so I mean, that's the value to the city in loss of staff productivity, opportunity loss for folks that have to show up. I mean, I know that I've had, time loss, which is money, and, how I feed my family, showing up to the hearings, employers have been involved. I know we're saying 60,000, but I would imagine the number has a value of six figures. We have our legal department that is working on this in-house, as well as the amount of FOIAs and so on. So I'm surprised to see the number is so low. I was certain it was going to be equivalent to that $500,000. It could have kept us at a 0% tax increase for our 2021 budget. But Ms. Rookie, you were going to say something else?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the memo does specify that this does not include staff time spent. So because the law department is in-house counsel, we don't keep track of our billable hours as government employees. So like I said, these outside attorney's fees for the special counsel, that's just in the past year. It doesn't account for the 3 years prior to that, where the law department handled it in-house. And then we currently have a couple lawsuits in circuit court of Cook County that the city's law department is representing the city in that are still ongoing and have been ongoing for a long time. So you are correct in saying that the fees and the time spent is a lot larger than this even shows.
Yeah, and so I will say that there have been other requests of residents of our law department that were backlogged and put at the bottom of a list because of the time spent to defend and deal with, the process of ethics board. So anything that can improve this process and allow less abuse of this system, I would be in support of. Alderman Wilson?
Thank you. So I think it's already been said pretty clearly, but I do support revisiting particularly this adjudication process. I think if we can find a way to make the process more functional and less time consuming, that would be appealing to both the prospective complainants and all participants. One thing I do want to mention, if we're going to start talking about things like fee shifting, I think you have to have that conversation really thoughtfully and carefully. And I am a little bit reluctant because what you don't want to do is create a scenario or a situation where you are, locking legitimate concerns out of the system and preventing people who do have legitimate things that are being raised. And I envision that there are circumstances where something, we're talking about ethics, so something might look bad, but someone might not otherwise have the available information to make a final determination, on an adjudication level, but it might be something that does warrant being looked at or addressed in some other way. So I think we have to be mindful of that and not take action that's going to prevent people from raising ethics questions.
Good point. Good point.
Was there any other comment or discussion from the committee?
I have a comment. I'm not sure if my screen, this is Alderman Fleming.
I'm sorry, it's me. I'm only looking at the 9 screens. I apologize, Alderman Fleming.
That's okay. So I thank you, Alderman Wilson. I was going to say the same thing. I hate for people not to feel like they can file because they don't have the money to pay. But Alex, given if we stay in this current state of ethics boards, I would suggest that the attorney coverage is similar to what we did I think we did it for our staff, where the law department had like a set list of lawyers, or there was a set fee so that lawyers who did represent staff knew what the fee was, so we didn't have this fluctuation, obviously depending on how many hours the lawyer puts in, but that, there is a set fee so we can ideally budget a little bit better. And then the piece, I am interested in what Melissa had to say about that piece, so I assume we'll be talking about that at another time. And I know that I suggested a gentleman for this last ethics board and kind of presented it to him as, it could be a few meetings and, X, Y, and Z. And I think he had been on there for a year and, it was not what I asked him to commit to. So I think that is not a fair use of citizen time as well, to have them in those situations. And I mean, I think overall in theory, I would not like us to pay for anything, but since we do cover this cost for our staff, I think we should cover this cost for our city council as well. And since we don't, Alderman Nguyen, to your point, our staff, we cover their costs, whether they're, I'll say, guilty or not guilty, for lack of a better term, and we don't ask them to reimburse us. So I don't think that, city council or staff or city council or citizens should be asked to reimburse costs when we know we pay a lot of money for different things that our staff face, and we're not asking them to, cover those costs either. But I would like Alex, if we stay on this current road where we have outside counsel, if you all can let us know what it would look like if we had some kind of fee structure or a list of attorneys that council could choose from to use, if that was an option, just so we had a better handle on what the cost might be.
Yeah, and if I can quickly address both your points. So per the outside counsel procedures and rules and procedural billing guidelines that we passed in 2019, any attorney representing any alderman or elected official in these hearings does follow our billing guidelines. So they are given the amounts ahead of time, and then in some situations we have negotiated the bill down to comply with that resolution. So we have done that previously, and these amounts do reflect the amounts that City Council approved in our outside counsel guidelines. And then just quickly, just as a point of clarification, so like I said, the Illinois statute allows that we may elect to reimburse attorneys' fees or represent employees, including elected officials. If an employee is found to be acting outside of the scope of their employment, the city has and can decline to represent that employee and pay their attorney's fees, and we have done that in the past. It's just if they're acting outside of the scope of their employment. So I just wanted to clarify.
Right, but if they're acting within the scope of their employment, we do cover their costs, whether they are, found to be liable or not. We do cover their costs.
Absolutely.
So I don't want to put another penalty on, a citizen or a council person.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so I just have one question for the committee moving forward. It sounds like direction to staff would be to look into moving the ethics complaints to an administrative review process. And then there's also a recommendation to look into fee shifting. Is the fee shifting provision only if we keep the ordinance as is? Or do we want legal to look into fee shifting if it moves to administrative adjudication?
Mayor Haggerty and then Alderman Rainey.
I think the discussion, Alex, has been really focused more on an alternative for adjudicating these issues that come before the ethics board. Again, we still have our ethics rules and all that. All we're talking about is how do we adjudicate. I think the question before us that the council and I have been having is more about having research done on what that might look like, okay, how that's done in other communities, because we're not the first to do it, and setting aside this fee shifting and all that for now, because I think we're looking at the bigger picture of the $62,000 plus all your internal legal costs that Alderman Ruth Simmons mentioned, which puts this over, 6 figures. How would we reduce that? And maybe you might look at all of this and say an administrative adjudication actually takes care of a lot of those expenses and saves the taxpayers and all of us money. So that would be my thing, is let's not get into the fee shifting and all that right now, and focus on, is there a better way and a more cost-effective way to do that saves our taxpayers money?
Yes. Alderman Rainey and then Alderman Rainey.
Yes, if an elected official files a complaint against a staff member or another elected official, is the complainant attorney covered?
Alderman Rainey, no, it has not been.
What was the question? If an elected official files against another elected official
Or
or
a staff member?
oh, Alderman Nguyen?
Well, I just wanted to say, I do agree with what the mayor was just saying. I think the fee shifting argument is really very secondary. And I do think the most critical thing is to get this to a hearing officer of some sort who has legal training that would save the staff time and attorney time. And so I would really like to see this something back from the staff about what that would look like, because I think that would achieve a lot of the goals that we're trying to do here, which is return this to much more of a of what our ethics code is all about in the first place, and also to reduce the costs.
And so, for example, in the example that Alderman Braithwaite Cates mentioned, there was a response given that this is not an appropriate complaint, and I think that there was some push, and then it was heard, and that initial response was actually valid after we spent what I think was $7,000 or $8,000. And how many times does that happen, or how many times will it happen if we continue in this practice? Alderman Wilson?
I think the mayor and others covered it. I just think we should defer on this fee shifting part until we'll finish having a conversation about the process.
I agree.
Is there any, I want to make sure I'm not missing anyone. Is there any further discussion? Okay, with that, then are you clear on the direction from the City Council?
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you. And is there any, I'm sorry, did someone say something?
Yes, just for your clarification, we skipped R3 on the agenda.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry about that. I was trying to let the youth in. Resolution R3, staff recommends City Council adoption of Resolution 121R20 to amend City Council Rule 1118. I move approval.
Second.
Alderman Rainey?
Yes, I don't want to get into the weeds with this, but I think our staff actually has used special order of business way too frequently. I think most of these items belong in committee, standing committee. If something comes up, and Lori Keenan was right on point on this, when something comes up that's a little unusual, then we have all sorts of issues because there are certain regulations and restrictions on items that are special order of business. So I know sometimes we get in a jam, and in order to deal with things quickly, we sometimes make it a special order of business. But short of budget season, I think we ought to be spending more time with these items in committee, standing committee, as opposed to special order of business. So I'm not supportive of any kind of additional special order of business. That's just my comment on the whole concept of special orders of business.
Is there any further discussion?
Madam Chair, if I may, this is Clerk Reed, if I may make a comment about why special, just regarding the rules and why special orders of business are important. And to completely agree with Alderman Rainey, the reason a special order of business should be something sacred to the council is that it removes the rights of members. When something is placed on the agenda as a special order of business, as we saw a few weeks ago with Alderman Ruth Simmons and Alderman Braithwaite attempting to hold the budget, it does not allow them to utilize another rule, which is that two aldermen may hold any item for further discussion. And the reason that is important is that thorough debate of issues is critical to our democracy. And so an item should only be placed on the agenda as a special order of business whereby we are going to limit the rights of voting members if a majority of the council previously votes to place that item as such. That is the only time the rights of members should be limited. And that's why it is important to keep the rule as it is, which only allows those special order of businesses to be placed when a majority vote of the council happens, as not to limit the rights of members.
Thank you. Kelly, did you just turn your camera on? Did you have a comment, or you were just Mayor Haggerty and then Alderman Wilson?
So I just wanted to clarify what is being proposed tonight is codifying what the practice of the Evanston City Council has been for many, 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 many years. And there has been a conflict between the practice and what was written into the rules. And so R3 in this resolution is rectifying that and saying the practice that we've had is the actual written policy. And the city manager's office thought that was important to do. I don't think that there has been a significant problem with the way that the city has operated in terms of its use of special orders of business. I'm supportive of this change in this resolution.
Thank you, Mayor Haggerty. Alderman Wilson?
Thank you. I think that this warrants a further discussion on what the rules are that apply to the special orders of business themselves. I don't want to spend another hour. I know we've got another committee and there are a lot of people waiting, but I do think we should move forward with this. It's important to have the rules reflect what actually is done and how things are done, and to not to try to work around those. So I suggest that we proceed with this resolution, but in conjunction with that we have a simultaneous conversation about the rules and restrictions on the special orders, so we are certain that those are consistent with what we A, want to do, and B, how things are actually getting done. It's important to have these available to manage the agendas, and that said, I think we should go ahead and move this along to the council and have that continuing conversation.
Alderman Rainey?
Well, special orders of business are very important, and it's an important tool to have. But the council has unless the council orders it, as far as I know, we have very little say about when we open our packet on a Thursday, what's going to be on special order of business. And sometimes it takes up a full sheet of paper on our agendas. So that's my concern. We have more special order of business in the last few years than I've ever seen before. And it is restrictive in terms of dealing with business. It is. That's on. I'm not even, forget if I even read this. I'm just commenting on what the practice has been lately with special orders of business. And this is finally my opportunity to comment on it.
Thank you. Was there further comment?
This item will require a suspension of the rules as it's just being introduced now if it's going to be moved on. And hopefully our practices reflect our rules rather than our rules reflecting our practices.
Well, this is a committee. It's up for introduction. Yeah, this is a committee.
It's correct. It's for action, but it's for action for the committee. It goes to city council. That's where you have intro action if it's a resolution. So that standard that the clerk is referring to only is at city council, not at a committee.
Right. So it was moved and seconded.
Alderman Braithwaite? I can't hear you. Okay, thank you. Alderman Nguyen?
Aye.
Alderman Wilson?
Aye.
Alderman Ruth Simmons?
Aye.
Alderman Suffredin?
No.
That was a no?
That's a no.
Thank you. Alderman Ravel?
Aye.
Alderman Rainey?
Aye.
Alderman Fleming?
No.
Mayor Haggerty?
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion passes. And then I think that is it. Is there any new business? Are there any items for communication? May I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Roll call.
At what time is Human Services going to start?
We're just waiting for roll call.
I'm sorry. Alderman Braithwaite?
Aye.
Alderman Nguyen?
Aye.
Alderman Wilson?
Aye.
Alderman Ruth Simmons?
Aye.
Alderman Suffredin?
Aye.
Alderman Ravel?
Aye.
Alderman Rainey?
Aye.
Alderman Fleming?
Aye.
Mayor Haggerty?
Aye.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned.